Here's just about everything you need to swap a beadlock from one tire to another. Valve stem tool to deflate all the air out of that one. Impact and torque wrench to remove the bolts and then reinstall them. Ball just to pull all the bolts in. Soapy water just to help with debeading this old one and then reseating the bead on the new one. NICs for the bolts, a bucket to set the wheel on, high lift to break the inner bead, air compressor, and then a big old truck. Alrighty, step one, once the wheel is off the vehicle, you want to go ahead and use your valve stem tool to remove the valve stem to then let all the air out of this tire. Once there's no more air coming out, that is when you can go ahead and break the bead. Alright, here's where the truck comes into play. So I've got the wheel rolled over here. Now if you don't want to scratch up your wheels, you can put something down to prevent this. Since mine are already raw crashed, I don't really care. But I get it lined up right here with this D-ring, and then I will lube up this entire surface between the wheel and the tire using my soapy water. Put the jack in between here, and essentially I will be pressing down on the tire itself, not the wheel, to then separate the tire from this inner bead of the wheel. Now you can kind of see what we're doing here. We're pushing it down past this inner portion in here. So once you get it started, you just basically work it all the way around until the whole thing is down there, and then you should be able to shove it down even. So there we go, we got the whole thing broken away. And as I walk around it, you can hear air come out and whatnot. So now we're ready to take the beadlock ring off. All right, here's where the impact and the bowl come into play. So I'm going to go around taking out all of these bolts evenly, star pattern, make sure the ring itself separates evenly and doesn't get wedged on one corner or another. So I'm gonna rip all these out and then we'll move on. Now that the beadlock ring is off, we can go ahead and flip over the tire, and then we'll pull the wheel straight out. Now for this part, you'll want lots of lubrication. That's where your soapy water comes in. Another thing I always like to do before I even start to try to pull this wheel out is go ahead and walk around the whole lip to start to separate the tire from the wheel itself. And then with these, I've had them apart a couple times before, so I can probably just rip this straight out, but sometimes you'll need a tire lever or just a big pry bar to be able to separate the wheel and tire. See, I might need to grab one actually. If you have powder coated wheels or care about, you know, the actual surface, you might want to be a little careful here, but I beat mine up pretty good, so it doesn't matter. Now that we've got the wheel completely by itself, I like to go ahead and give it a good rinse, just because of all the dirt and stuff I had on there, and then get the inner portion, all the rubber marks and whatnot all cleaned up. Now I've got the bulky stuff washed off, I'm going to go through and take my air hose and blow out all of these threaded portions, get all the dirt and whatnot out of there. Now that we got that old wheel all cleaned up, it's time to get the tire ready for putting the new beadlock, or the old beadlock I guess, back into it. One thing to keep a note, if you're doing brand new tires or used ones, there are usually two different sides. You can see these letters are perforated on this side, these are not. Also, like tires like Nitto, they have different tread patterns sometimes, one side compared to the other, one maybe more aggressive, whatever the case may be. For these, I prefer to have these perforated sides out. That's the way the rest of them are, so I'm going to do this one as well. So that means that this side will be down. So as I let the tire down, because when we go to throw this new wheel in, it'll go in this way, so the back side will actually be this way. Now, once again, with the new one, you want lots of soapy water just to help lubrication. Makes it easier on yourself. Then we can take the wheel. These are brand new. Make sure you have a valve stem in there, but since these are old, they're good to go. Toss your wheel in, Now we're ready to put the bolts in. Here's where you want to go ahead and put the tire and wheel onto the bucket. You then start your beadlock ring process. One other thing to note, if you care, OCD, that kind of thing, wherever your valve stem is, now is the time to rotate it where you want. For me, I always have them near the information of the tire, so where the 42 is, like so. And then I can go ahead, get my bucket in place. Watch your fingers, of course. Boom, just like that. Now we can go ahead, make sure your lip is good to go. This one fell right where it needs to be. Sometimes you have to pry this tire lip over this ring, but nowadays the beadlocks have been pretty good about giving it plenty of space. So now I can go ahead and get the ring set where I want and then start the install. Now if you'll notice, these are double drilled. So there's two different spots. If you break a couple bolts or whatever, that way you don't have to worry about tapping them out. You can just rotate the ring another half rotation, and there's twice as many holes that are drilled. One thing with these rings, you notice Dirty Life has little logos. KMC and other brands do too. I like to put that over the valve stem. So you can see here, get the holes lined up, Dirty Life over the valve stem. And now I'm ready to put the bolts in. Here's where you're going to want to anti-seize every single one of these bolts. Now, because I already had this on and off a couple times this year alone from racing and rock crawling, because I swapped between 37s and 42s, these still have plenty of anti-seize on the bolts themselves, as well as inside the threaded portions that I'm going to be reusing. So there's no need for me to add more anti-seize here. I'm just going to go ahead and get all of these started, and then we'll move on with the torquing process. Notice here how I try to get the ring to go down evenly on all sides. Then I go back through and give it one quick last zap prior to torquing. Alright, now that we've got the whole thing started, the gap looks pretty even, I'm going to go ahead and take my torque wrench, set to the manufacturer specs, look up on their website, do whatever you got to do. Go ahead and torque all of these, and then we'll move on. You want to do cross start pattern, kind of like what I'm doing here, and then go around a couple times in a circle to make sure you're retorquing them. If you notice, I actually go back and forth because some turns I get more than the other, and I want to make sure that they're actually torquing down the spec. Now that the beadlock is 100% put together, it's time to go ahead and put in our valve core. Now yours might have already had these or done this in a different step. I'm gonna go ahead and get this in here, and then we'll go ahead and put some air in. Oops. Here's where your air compressor will come in. Mine's over here in the corner. You can use one of those little mini ones or a power tank, whatever you got. One thing I am going to do before I start putting air in though, is go ahead and once again lubricate this inner bead just so it seats nice and easy. Can never have too much soapy water. Just like that, that's how you swap a beadlock from one tire to the next. So now I can say goodbye to these 37s and hello to these 42s. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.